you look at a grievance hearing in the state of Texas and then they come back from closed session, they're reading a script. Who do you think wrote it? The lawyer. So who's running the school board?
Jonathan is the general counsel and president of Remnant Law. He's a Navy JAG officer, currently serving as a commander in the United States Navy Reserves. Today, he's helping defend moms and dads and citizens right here at home who are standing up for their faith, their families, and their freedoms.
The lawyers are really scaring a lot of school board members into compliance with their viewpoint. So they're actually helping select the superintendents at the school board, but they're also advising and assisting the school board on a lot of these matters, and they're basically running the school board. We should stand up for those same kind of rights, those natural rights that aren't really granted from government, but they're granted from God. People are just not paying attention. So I think why you're seeing more incidents is because more people are paying attention, they're speaking out, and the system was just not prepared to have all these people speaking out and questioning their authority.
Jonathan, welcome to the show, brother. Well, welcome to the Defending Freedom Show, everybody. And today we have an awesome guest with us, Mr. Jonathan Hullihan. And before we jump in, I just want to give you a small snapshot of his bio. Jonathan is the general counsel and president of Remnant Law. He's a Navy JAG officer, currently serving as a commander in the United States Navy Reserves, and he has advised Marines in Iraq, SEAL teams, and Special Operations Forces in Afghanistan on matters of national significance. But today, his fight looks a little different. Today, he's helping defend moms and dads and citizens right here at home who are standing up for their faith, their families, and their freedoms. Jonathan, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Well, hey, let's just jump right into this. I want to ask you, from your vantage point as an attorney working with citizens across the country, what are you seeing right now when it comes to everyday Americans trying to exercise their constitutional rights? Are we seeing a shift happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the kind of cases that we've seen, we see a big erosion of individual liberty, First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights across the board. And that's where Remnant Law, we're a public interest law firm, we really step in on the First Amendment issues, the religious liberty, parental rights, government transparency, accountability. Across the board, we see the normal citizen having less transparency in governance, less liberty in governance. Really on the First Amendment, we see an erosion across the board where you see not only non-government actors working with local governments, but really suppressing parental rights, suppressing First Amendment rights to speak out. And a lot of government entities, whether we're talking about school boards or local governments, they view parents and citizens as speaking out as an annoyance. And a lot of times these schools or government officials are backed up by an army of lawyers, big law firms, and it leaves the normal citizen without a redress of their grievances, which is part of our constitutional-based order. So that's where we step in. We try and level the playing field as much as we can to advise and assist parents on their rights at grievances, at school board meetings, all the way up to administrative complaints and lawsuits if necessary. So our goal is to level the playing field to reinstitute constitutional norms as it's meant to be with individual liberty.
Man, it's awesome. And, a lot of these parents, when they find themselves in these situations, they don't have the financial means. They don't have the ability or the resources to just pick up the phone and call an attorney. And I don't really know of many attorneys that are actually doing what you're doing at Remnant Law. It's kind of a unique space that you're in. And it seems like from what you're describing that we find ourselves today where the legal system is being weaponized against the parent in a way. It's being weaponized against the American citizen. What does that actually look like in real life?
You're absolutely right. There's not a lot of big law firms or lawyers that are willing to take a parent's case for a school board matter or a grievance matter. First of all, it's really expensive, and parents don't have the means or the resources a lot of times just trying to make ends meet and do what's best for their children. They don't have thousands and thousands of dollars. Just a grievance hearing alone could cost a parent $5,000-$10,000 just to assist and show up at a meeting, and show up at a board meeting and assist that parent through the process. It's very expensive. At Remnant Law, we're a public interest law firm. We exist to benefit the general public. So it doesn't matter if you're a Republican, a Democrat, if you're conservative. We focus on the issues. Do you have a right to speak? Do you have a First Amendment claim? Do you have a right to redress your grievances? Those are the issues that we focus on, and we're pro bono, 100% pro bono. We exist to help the general public. As a public interest law firm, we cannot even accept fees. We're prohibited from accepting fees. We accept donations, but other than that, we exist to help the general public at large. And the issues that we take on are to take on those big issues that where otherwise they wouldn't find lawyers to help them. When you have a school board or a parent that goes to a grievance hearing, and I've got many examples of this, a level 1 grievance hearing. Across the board in Texas, a level 1 grievance hearing is supposed to be handled at the lowest level possible. Really, it's between the administrator or the teacher or the principal and the parent. But now, some of these administrators are showing up with multiple lawyers at the meeting. So you have a parent that thinks they're going to handle something at the lowest level, and the school is now backed up with multiple lawyers. That's not what it was meant to be like, right? So the schools and the government entities have injected the lawyers, and all we are trying to do is level the playing field and kind of counter that lawfare that's been unleashed on the normal citizen, on the normal parent. And we're attempting to level the playing field, advise and assist them on their rights, and take it all the way through, if necessary, to stand up for the Constitution and stand up for the individual citizens.
What are you seeing a lot? I mean, you alluded to some of it when we started, but what are you seeing are some of the most, the patterns of issues that are coming up? Like what are some of the big areas of concern for parents where the school district is just ignoring them, or they're going after the parent for standing up? Like what are some of those? Do you have any actual?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a macro level, like the big picture, just questioning their authority, right? Like just parents asking for records, using the Texas Public Information Act or whatever state information act there is in Florida, the Sunshine Act, asking for records and not getting all the records, asking questions at school board meetings or questioning how they are governing themselves. They're not getting, they're getting pushback at all levels, whether we're talking about just individually dealing with the administration or at public meetings. Just across the board, it's who are you to question our authority? We know what we're doing. We're the best, we're the smartest, we're the elected officials. Who are you, citizen, to question us? And just across the board, that's what I'm saying. When parents are speaking out at school board meetings and they are speaking on a matter of public concern, and they're speaking out on whether it's books or material or curriculum, or they have a good faith basis to believe that a wrong has been committed, and they speak out on that. They're getting cease and desist letters from speaking out at a public meeting.
Wow.
They're getting lawfared. And by the way, backed up by big law firms that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of the school budget to threaten and intimidate and coerce parents into not speaking out. And that is shocking to me. And at the same time, you have these same schools saying, oh, we need another $250 million bond passed because we can't afford things. But they're willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on lawyers and law firms to suppress speech. Just let the parents speak and respond accordingly.
Right.
We're not asking for much. We're asking for people to be allowed to speak and live in a free country under a constitutional order that hundreds of thousands of men and women have shed their blood and died for the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Texas and all the other state constitutions to have a right to speak out. So it bothers me greatly, and I'm personally offended, and it's hard to personally offend me, but I'm personally offended when a constitutional right is not adhered to. And I call them petty tyrants. Petty tyrants don't allow parents or citizens to speak out, don't let them to say their opinion. It really bothers me, and that's why we're in this space, because we believe, as every American should believe, that you may not like what I have to say or what another person has to say, but you have a right to say it. And if you suppress that, that's viewpoint discrimination, and that is a First Amendment violation. Or in Texas, maybe an anti-SLAPP violation. Whatever it is across the board, people have a right to speak out and speak out about their local governance, and that's why we exist. One of the main reasons.
Exactly. I want to ask you something. Why do you think a school board member, first of all, these people are elected to serve the public? Like, they're not made dukes and kings and like little Napoleons. But why is it that if a parent has a problem with, let's say, a woke curriculum, or they have a problem with the books that are in the libraries, for instance, is huge across the country right now. And when a parent shows up to speak out about that, what is the interest of the school board member to not listen to them, or not take their claims seriously, or not go and investigate and make sure that the kids are protected from those kinds of materials and resources? Like, I'm having a really hard time understanding why school board members fight so hard against parents and don't see this. If they're there to help protect the interests of the child as well, obviously you would think if they got elected to a school board, that's what they're there for, because they care about kids, they care about what's happening in the schools and public education. But when parents bring this stuff up, it's like they're met with hostility and resistance. Sometimes they're even arrested. What is that?
Well, I think, and this is purely speculation, but I do believe at the end of the day, a lot of the people being elected to many positions are weak morally and weak from a character perspective. And I believe that they're being essentially run by the lawyers, right? So it's hard. It's hard to imagine, but they'll go back in closed session and say, "Oh, you can't remove that book. That's a First Amendment violation. We're going to be sued from all these people for First Amendment violations because we've removed a book," which is actually not the standard. I mean, the Llano County case out of the Fifth Circuit, where the Supreme Court declined to take on cert, the government speech doctrine controls. In other words, school boards can regulate the curriculum based on their community standards. So when it comes to the books, I think a lot of times the lawyers are scaring them into compliance and threatening them with, "You're going to be sued," this and that. I think when it comes to just parental decisions, protecting their own investigations on misconduct, again, the lawyers are really driving home a lot of this, and they're back in the back in closed session advising all these school board members, telling them, "You're going to be personally sued for First Amendment violations. You're going to be personally held liable for all of these things." So the lawyers are really scaring a lot of school board members into compliance with their viewpoint. So I think the first thing a school board should do, if they're getting that kind of advice, is get a new lawyer, get a new law firm. There's several big law firms around the state that really control the policies. They really control the narrative, and they really some of these law firms, and I'm not going to name them, but some of these law firms also have a wing of their law firm where they select the superintendent. So they'll also have a superintendent selection side of their law firm business. So they're actually helping select the superintendents at the school board for the school board, but they're also advising and assisting the school board on a lot of these matters. And they're really, to answer your question, they're basically running the school board. Unelected bureaucrats. It's what Woodrow Wilson would have called a panel, so-called panel of experts. It's the bureaucrats that are really running the schools and not the elected officials. The elected officials are only told in a lot of situations, they're only being told certain things, or a lot of things are being held back from them. And then when they do have to make a decision, you have lawyers writing scripts for them. If you look at all these grievances, when they come back from a closed session, they're reading from a script. That's because a lawyer wrote that for them. That's not their words. That's not their belief. Every time you look at a grievance hearing in the state of Texas, and then they come back from closed session, they're reading a script. Who do you think wrote it? The lawyer. So who's running the school board? The lawyers from these big law firms. So I think that's a big problem in the state, where you just have weak weak people in office that are not willing to stand up and do the right thing when the time calls. And that's not courage. I mean, that's being a coward. So
Right.
we have to elect good people that stand on moral courage and are going to do the right thing, even if it's not popular, and willing to kind of stand in that breach of liberty and say, I'm going to do what's right. I'm not going to care about what I've been called, or I'm not going to care about, following legal advice is one thing. Having the lawyers and the law firms run your school board as a shadow governance is something completely different.
Right. And that's what it's just advice, right? It's legal advice.
Yeah, it's legal
You don't
advice.
have to do it. And if the law has already been passed at the state level, it goes back to what you just said. It's courage. I think it's courage.
It's courage.
And I think it's having a sense of morals. And when you have cowardly people who don't have a moral or biblical foundation, and they're making decisions all the way from the local level to the city to the state, then you end up in the situation that we're in America. You end up with the situation that we're in our public education system. 100%.
Yes.
So, a lot of people, they walk into these meetings thinking that, they're gonna have the ability to exercise their right to speak, but suddenly they're facing legal threats. They're being removed from these meetings. Why are everyday citizens so vulnerable to these situations? Like, I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Is this just a matter of resources, or is this where we find ourselves today? How did we get in this situation?
I think it's just the normalization of deviation. I mean, just for so long, these people weren't paying attention, and people were that's why we're in the situation we're in. There's so much going on in people's lives, school sports, they're just trying to get by, make two ends meet. They don't have a time to read the agendas and go to the school board and review all the books that are in the libraries. They don't have time for that. Most people don't have time for that. So it's just this normalization of deviation that has crept into not only the schools, but all level of governance. I mean, the property tax rates are across the board have increased. Government spending is through the roof. People are just not paying attention. So I think why you're seeing more incidents is because more people are paying attention. They're speaking out, and the system was just not prepared to have all these people speaking out and questioning their authority. I mean, it really is an elitist mentality in so many levels where, who are you, citizen, to question my authority? I'm the elected, I'm the bureaucrat, I'm the lawyer. Who are you to question me? So a lot of it, I think initially, it's gotten better over time, but you still see it. You see parents get removed from school board meetings. Those are First Amendment violations. If that's viewpoint discrimination, if they're removing people from school board meetings in a traditional public forum where they're speaking on something on the agenda, or they're in an open meeting and they're being removed for what they said, that is a First Amendment violation. Again, we get back to, you may not like what I have to say, but I have a right to say it. I don't like a lot of things that progressive or the left say, but they have a right to say it. They have a right to say it. And when you suppress viewpoints, whether on the right or the left, that creates an echo chamber. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to suppress viewpoints. And I think as a society, we should hear all viewpoints, and we may not like it or disagree, but that opens up and fosters debate. So when you have somebody speaking out on a school bond, or you have somebody speaking out on a book issue and they remove them, that's tyranny, frankly. That's tyranny. They remove them because they don't like what they have to say, or they don't like maybe they speak out on a vote, or with the way a particular investigation went down in a school district, and they remove them for it. That's not freedom. That's not liberty. That's petty tyrants. And in this country, we don't do tyrants. So to answer your question, I think that's why a lot of these things are happening. They just don't like they're having their authority questioned. And for so long, they haven't been questioned, and you've seen a rise of grassroots organizations such as CDF that really step into that kind of and shine light on those subjects. So I think that's why you see more of those things happening. We're more aware.
Right. Where do you think that awareness kicked in? What do you think was the turning point or the catalyst for people to say, wait a minute?
I think society, American society as in whole, we've trusted what medical doctors have said. We've trusted what local leaders have said. And I think post COVID, I think a lot of people started questioning, hey, I don't know if that's exactly accurate, or hey, I want to take ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine to help suppress my chances of getting COVID. Why am I not allowed to do that? And I think just generally at large, you started seeing people questioning authorities that previously were not questioned after the COVID pandemic. So I think that kind of opened the floodgates, and I think you've also just seen general distrust in governance go down. You've seen a lot of scandals. You've seen people using official positions to line their pockets, campaign scandals, abuse of power. Look, that's always happened in this country, but I think the rise of cell phones, communication, internet, all those things have just made people more aware. So I think just the instant kind of awareness of it based on the internet. Public school meetings are now televised and streamed. More people have access. So I think awareness has risen, along with general people being skeptics of actions that government is taking. Again, every few years you hear elected officials say, "We almost got them. We almost got them. We're going to lower your taxes next time." I mean, how long have we been hearing that? How long have we been hearing
the same song and dance?
We're going to get them next time. We're going to close the border next time. We're going to do X, Y, Z. We're going to secure our elections next time. But it never happens. And it happens incrementally. They'll give you a little something here, a little something there. But at the end of the day, you don't have bold leadership. A lot of these elected officials are not bold. They're not willing to put it all on the line, because many of them, and I'm not trying to turn this into about elected officials, but many of them are, well, what's my next office? Okay, I'm going to run for this seat. They plan out their entire political career 10, 20 years in advance, and they don't do anything to jeopardize their future political career. And that's not the kind of people we need right now. We need leaders. We need people that are ready to lead and do the right thing, even when it's not popular. And I just don't see those type of people in a lot of government positions right now, elected positions. And the electeds are essentially listening to the bureaucrats, the so-called panel of experts that really long-term run the school systems, long-term run the bureaucracies of the county government. You can have a county commissioner elected, you can have a school board elected, but those entrenched bureaucrats are always there, and they're the ones that are generally making the day-to-day policy that's going to outlast a lot of the electeds. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but hopefully it was enlightening.
No, it was. And, you do see that. You do see people that go in for the wrong reasons. You see people that go in, maybe they have pure motives in the beginning, and then they get caught up in what I would call is the system or the machine. And they go in and they're not by most standards, they're not very wealthy individuals. But somewhere along the line, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, they're multimillionaires, and they're still in office, they're still in power. And like you said, they're making promises, they're saying all the right stuff. People continue to vote for them, but nothing gets done. And so I think it's so important for people that we have to have God-fearing people step up. And I believe if the church, the remnant, the body of Christ would mobilize and come together, we could take back our local school boards, our local city councils, commissioners court, offices at the state level and federal level. But there's a lot of people, Christians in particular, it baffles my mind that they're apathetic to this, or they're saying, oh, well, we don't get involved in politics. That's not what we do. But literally, politics has stepped into the moral and, I guess you could say, the moral and religious lane. But you can't avoid the two. If you do that, that's why we're in the mess that we're in. But if God's people would come together and mobilize and start to vote their values and run godly people in office and mobilize around those people and get them into office, we could change the whole dynamic here at the local level and at the federal level.
Yeah, and 100%. And the voter participation levels are pathetic. Look, an educated society is a free society. We've seen, it, you know, some of my background, I worked with on information warfare and things like that. To see the level of basically propaganda uh, during election cycles drives me nuts. You will see people getting elected based off pure endorsements. What people don't realize is a lot of these endorsements are related to the political consultants. You'll see endorsements based on which political consultant is used. And all of those things then you have PAC money and mailers. So at the end of the day, you have all the citizenry. They're not educating themselves on the issues or the policy or the prior votes. They're falling for mailers and commercials and endorsements, and they're not educating themselves on what's the why. Who is this person? Why are they running? What is their actual policy position on books, on religious liberty, on free speech, on property taxes, on across the board? We're not teasing out the policy, and we're not getting educated on the issues because people are falling for the mailers and the endorsements. It drives me crazy to just see so many during an election cycle. You just have mailboxes full of endorsements. And to me, all the endorsements is quid pro quo, pay for play across the board. And those endorsements aren't free. I mean, somebody's going to call in a favor at some point. Once those electeds get elected, hey, remember all the PAC money that we helped you out with? Remember we got you elected? Hey, why don't you help us out with this issue? And maybe they do get enrich themselves in some form or fashion. Now they're captured, right? Now they're captured as far as they're stuck in a vicious cycle where they've taken money, they've committed some act that's unethical, immoral, whatever, and they continue to do the bidding of whoever is funding them. And essentially a lot of these officials become useful idiots, I mean, for lack of a better term, and they just do the bidding of whoever is funding their campaigns and putting them in positions of power. And it's really sad, and that's not what the founders envisioned.
Right.
That is not what the founders envisioned. It's not a free society when candidates and elected officials are really being run behind the scenes by these kind of shadow elements. And it's really sad to see in our constitutional republic.
I agree. And so I want to get back to remnant law and what you do specifically at the grassroots level, because I don't see a lot of other organizations or law firms stepping in to that space. I think it's really unique to what you do in the service that you provide and what Citizens Defending Freedom does as well. And so, could you speak to what led to the creation of Remnant Law and really your passion and your heart personally to defend everyday American citizens at that level?
I think, it all stemmed before. I was a Navy JAG, but I also worked at a commercial litigation law firm, and I was dealing with a lot of medical freedom issues post-COVID. And I started working with CDF, and we were advising and helping CDF with their legal issues. But it became apparent, like to benefit the larger public, there needed to be a standalone public interest law firm. So in order to really serve the general public and not just handle legal issues that may or may not come up with CDF as a nonprofit, we really started focusing on the general public, and the idea of remnant law was born. And when we looked at kind of, for lack of a better term, it's not the market, but when you look at what services were being provided from a general, for helping the general public, you look at all the great long-standing public interest law firms, and I'm sure I'll leave some out, but Liberty Counsel, First Liberty, Alliance Defending Freedom, all the Pacific Justice Institute. They have a very great practice in a lot of these same issues, but a lot of it is focused on the appellate level or maybe the Supreme Court level, and they're going for a lot of this generational change, which is awesome, and that's what we need to go for when we're talking about these long-standing legal abuses that have taken place. But we looked at it like, well, who's helping the mom's on the ground and the dad's on the ground? Who's helping the parent? Because this normalization of deviation takes place because over long term, and to shift the culture back and to shift the lawfare back, you really have to start at the grassroots level. So that's why we say from the grassroots to the Supreme Court, because it truly is a grassroots effort to build those records and assist those parents at the grassroots level. So we take on all the way from small grievances, book challenges, all of those things. We start out at the lowest level possible, because you'll see a lot of parents, citizens get pushed out of the system at that early level. So there's never a chance for it to get to a court because they've been pushed out, or the record has been built that is not so great for them, or you've had lawyers advising the government, the school boards or the government agencies, and there's no good record. There's no good, the issues haven't been flushed out. So if we advise and assist and represent at that lowest level, and we can get it through all the grievance hearings, we can get something up to the TEA, for example, we can get something up for an administrative hearing. We can build this whole record of, even if we lose, we now have people on record of what they've done, what they've said, what the school board has done, where they've gone wrong, what they've done, where they've done things right. To give you an example of this, on school book challenges, I mean, we take these things and we go from a level 1 grievance all the way through to the TEA. And then those records were actually used to discuss the issues with some of the state legislatures on SB 13. Mm-hmm. And then we use some of those same records when we filed an amicus brief in the United States Supreme Court on obscenity. So we've taken level 1 grievances at the local school board level and included that evidence that we've gathered in those records all the way to the United States Supreme Court. So that's why we say from the grassroots to the Supreme Court. So it really is a niche practice to counter that kind of, I call it counter lawfare, that's what it is. But we're countering lawfare at the lowest level possible in order to make change at the strategic level.
No, man, it's a powerful strategy, and that was a great example. Do you have another example where CDF and Remnant Law have stepped in to help a citizen that was being targeted or attacked? I can think of several of them off the top of my head. I love the Pastor Steve Say case, the Jarvis, not Jarvis. What's the young man from Fort Worth? It was
Mr. Newton.
Mr. Newton, a great case. We have Pastor Simmons in Corpus Christi. Can you just kind of walk us through some of those cases and one or two of them?
Yeah, I mean, I got a call, and this case is concluded, so I can talk about it. I'll talk about the Mr. Newton case. Young kid, 19 years old. He was out there with his group learning how to be a street preacher. And he was out street preaching on the streets of Fort Worth in the stockyards. So Mr. Newton, and there had been several instances in Fort Worth in the stockyards where street preachers were out there. They were speaking out against drinking, speaking out against adultery, speaking out against gambling, all the things. And, they really didn't like that in the stockyards. They didn't like that somebody was on a public sidewalk, on a traditional public forum, speaking out and using their First Amendment rights. So the police were called. Mr. Newton was told, hey, you can't be out here speaking. You're speaking too loud. You're blocking doorways. You're disturbing the peace. You're creating all these issues, because there was some complaints from alleged complaints from local business owners. Well, Mr. Newton, very polite. He's a kid. He's out there doing the right thing. He's just speaking the word of God. He's trying to convince folks, hey, do the right thing, be a good person, don't commit adultery, don't do the things that people do, and they come out and
trying to witness to people the gospel message of Jesus Christ.
100%. Okay, so he gets ticketed and cited and threatened with arrest for disturbing the peace because he was exercising his First Amendment rights. We took that to a jury trial based on First Amendment claims. Through the course of the trial and through discovery, I mean, we found evidence of body cam footage where police officers were talking about, we're going to get rid of these street preachers once and for all, and things like that. So there really was a viewpoint discrimination factor there where they just did not want somebody speaking on a traditional public forum, which is a sidewalk. And okay, this is not communist China. This is not Cuba. This is not Venezuela. This is the United States of America. And again, I get back to my point. People may not like what people have to say, but they have a right to say it. They do. They have a right to say it. There's exceptions to that, obviously, if you're inciting violence and all that. Those are exceptions to the First Amendment. But speaking the word of God and witnessing on a public sidewalk in the United States of America is not what should get you a citation for disorderly conduct and drag a kid through a jury trial.
Right.
They would not dismiss the ticket. They would not dismiss the case. So I said jury trial. I think we got an acquittal in like 10 minutes. It was a great case, standing up for free speech, standing up for religious liberty. And they've had no more problems with street preachers being cited in Fort Worth since that occurred. We've got so many cases like that. We've got, we had a pastor down in the Corpus Christi area that was speaking out on an election, his right. And it was part of his religious belief talking about an election. And he talked about candidates and what his beliefs were and to vote based on biblical values and based on his Christian belief system. And it was actually tied into the sermon. This gentleman, Pastor Simmons, gets threatened with a lawsuit, gets served with a lawsuit, and is dragged through the legal mud because of what he said from the pulpit at church on a Sunday. Again, this is not communist China. We don't sue our pastors and arrest people for what they say at the highest level. The First Amendment, religious liberty, traditional public forums. This is the highest level of protected speech. And you have folks in school districts too now going after people for protected speech. So we, in Texas, it's called the anti-SLAPP. It's strategic lawsuits against public participation. So whenever somebody gets sued for defamation or libel or speaking out on a matter of public concern, exercising those First Amendment rights, Texas has a very good statute that allows you to respond to that quickly and get the lawsuit dismissed. And a lot of those fees, and if you file that, the lawyers representing the party that's been sued can recover attorney's fees. It's a shall. So for Pastor Simmons, we hit him with the anti-SLAPP, First Amendment claims. We not only got the case dismissed, but we also won our attorney's fees in that case. We've seen in Florida, I'll talk about Florida. We have a client, and she's talked about this on her podcast on Liberty Hangout, Caitlin Bennett. We've had issues with farmers markets in Florida. And she was going to, again, we're not talking about private property. We're talking about sidewalks and public parks, traditional public forums where you have a right to speak. She's going to farmers markets that are held in traditional public forums, and she's questioning people. She's conducting journalistic activities, again, highest level of protected speech, and they don't like her there in a park or in a public forum, and they trespass her or attempt to trespass her. So we've had that happen. We've gotten her off. We've sent letters. We've explained very explicitly these are First Amendment violations if you use the color of law to trespass people from public forums, traditional public forums. So those are big kind of victories in Florida. She's had no reported issues with farmers markets. That opened up the wicket. We've got a case in Utah now. We've got a case in we've got multiple cases. We've got a case in Virginia where we've had these kind of First Amendment claims where people are using the color of law to suppress First Amendment rights at traditional public forums. So as far as pastors go, again, Pastor Steve Say, that case, we still have some litigation in that case, so I want to be careful. But at the trial level, he was sued under the Ku Klux Klan Act for essentially participating, and not even really participating, but participating in a Trump rally. And at the time, the Biden administration had a campaign bus going through, and they said it was suppression of protected activity, essentially because they had a Trump rally that was adjacent to this bus. So they sued. They had 30 progressive lawyers from various public interest law firms across the country, many of them from New York. They sued this poor pastor, his wife, multiple other parties. I think there was 5 in total, and tried to sue them, and really, again, lawfare, for expressing their First Amendment rights. And they tried to. Wendy Davis was a plaintiff, former Texas governor candidate,
Wow.
and they tried to essentially use lawfare against them to suppress their free speech. So we brought in one of our partner law firms and Banal Law. They did a great job. Remnant Law joined the case, and we were able to find no liability for Pastor Say. And we expended a lot of money in that case with lawyers, but we got him off. And it was very, very important that we have to draw a line in the sand and fight back. I think the time has come where we can't just take it anymore. When lawfare is being used against our citizens or against our parents or against people that are really using the First Amendment or they're just parental rights, whatever it is, and then they're being sued into existence, we have to stand up for them. We have to. I mean, that's what a just, moral society does. That's what a constitutional-based republic does. We stand up for those people, and we stand up for the First Amendment. And that's what the founders asked for. They put their lives, their blood, and their treasure on the line. And we should stand up for those same kind of rights, those natural rights that aren't really granted from government, but they're granted from God. These are natural rights we're talking about.
That's right.
And if we don't recognize them as natural rights, then they can be granted and taken away by government at any time. So we're not just standing up for the Constitution. We're standing up for God's kingdom, and we're standing up for natural law and the natural order of your right to speak on things that don't make sense, things that aren't right. You have a right to raise your child how you see fit, and you can't have the government coming in and telling you otherwise. That is your natural right as a parent. And to have obscenity laced books or curriculum, and then you have elected officials that are just completely dismissive of your concerns, that's tyranny. And we're here to stand up against tyranny.
Man, that's awesome. You touched on several things there, and I know Remnant Law describes itself as a faith-based public interest law firm. And you kind of hit on some stuff there that I just want to tap into. How does your faith in God come to the table in the way that you handle these cases, and and how you approach defending these people in these cases?
That's a really hard question. I think it's based on just send me, as in Isaiah, send me, guide me. It's really a gut instinct. It's a lot of prayers about the kind of cases to take, what to do, and getting back to that baseline natural law and being motivated by people's rights as individuals, as Christians, to stand up for what's right and to speak out when they're staring tyranny in the face and things are hard. If it were easy, anybody would do it. So this is hard, grinding work. And when you're handling things at that lowest level and you're not getting the media attention, you're not winning the Supreme Court cases because you're really focused on that ground level, that's your faith in God and your faith in doing the right thing, and that innate, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right place? That's what motivates me, because all my instincts, all my faith is saying, yes, you're in the right place, doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're standing up for parents and for religious liberty at the lowest level possible. And you are getting those strategic victories for the glory of the kingdom when the opportunities come in. So I think that's what really drives me, knowing it's hard to explain. It's just this innate feeling that I'm in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And that's kind of what motivates me.
Praise God. I couldn't agree more. And I tell you, it's, on the legal front and what we're seeing and our freedoms and everything kind of being assaulted, behind it, we say this often, but it truly is. At the core, it's a spiritual battle, right? It's a battle between Satan's kingdom and God's kingdom, good versus evil, right versus wrong, right? And that's the formula that God gives us in Revelation, right? We know that Satan was defeated. He was cast to earth. He went off to wage war against those who hold fast to God's command and hold fast their testimony in Jesus Christ. That's us as believers, right? So that's really where this power struggle is happening. It's in the spiritual realm. And but God says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb, the word of our testimony, and we're not afraid to die. Courage is that ingredient. And man, you exemplify all those, man. So I'm honored to be in this fight with you. So I've seen some of the most egregious, most difficult situations that citizens have faced at this level in this kind of arena that we find ourselves in together a lot of times. But you've also seen victory. What gives you hope right now when you look at the future of this country?
I think the youth of our nation, I think a lot of kids are more conservative now, and they're not as easily swayed as they used to be. So when I look at my kids and I see other kids, they're very a lot of young kids are coming up through the church. They're religious, they're conservative, they're questioning some of these things. So that gives me faith. Living in the greatest country in the history of the world gives me faith. I mean, look, despite our faults, despite our scars, this is the greatest country in the history of the world, bar none. I'm not apologetic. I'm a nationalist. I love America. I've been around the world. I've been to some really bad places in this country, in this world, Iraq, Afghanistan. I've seen what true tyranny looks like. I've seen what people that live in places like that go through. So there's a lot of problems with this country, but there's a lot of good in this country, and there's nothing that can't be course corrected. There's nothing that we can't solve as a nation. We disagree with a lot of people in this country on a lot of different issues, whether it's the books or just name your issue across the board. But Americans, we have a lot more in common than we have not in common. And I think bridging that gap through the church, bridging that gap through dialogue and through open communication, I think at the end of the day, that's going to solve a lot of these issues. That's why I get so upset about the First Amendment issues, because how can you ever fix these issues if you can't even have a conversation without being threatened with violence, with lawsuits? You can't even have a conversation. That's un-American. I think we should all open the dialogue. We should all let people speak, and that's what's going to give me faith in this country. So that's why we're doing what we do, to make sure that we can bridge those gaps and we can have more in common with folks that may disagree with us politically or spiritually, and we open those communication dialogues, and that gives me faith. And I'm hopeful that as Americans, we can all unite on a lot of these issues, or at least have a conversation. You're in a dangerous situation if you can't even have a conversation anymore. And that's what radicalizes people. Right. And people do commit violence if you can't even talk. Another example, you have Miss Bennett, that she goes out and speaks, and they blow whistles in her ears and they yell at her and they won't let her speak. That is not American. That is un-American to not let people speak their piece. And I think also Americans need to stop being so perpetually offended. Everybody's offended about everything all the time, and just stop being so offended, and let's have a conversation and give us your points where you disagree, and we'll consider them, and we'll have just an intellectual conversation. And maybe I may learn something from you, and you may learn something from you. When I was in law school, I was president of the Federalist Society and of our school, and I brought in some controversial speakers because that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to further the dialogue. I wanted to bring in speakers. I got protested. I got threatened with having my speakers canceled. I got attempted to get canceled in law school multiple times. And And I would go speak to some of the more progressive folks in my law school, and I'd say, let's just have a conversation. And we would. And I would listen to what they had to say. I would disagree with them. I would give them counterpoints, and we would just have a conversation. And at the end of the day, I think we were better for it. And after I started reaching out to these other students in these other groups, they stopped trying to cancel me because they understood my viewpoint and I understood theirs, and we just had a conversation. So I think to answer your question, I think that gives me faith. If we can get back to that place where we can have honest conversations and really speak as Americans, that we have more common than we have not in common, I think we'll be in a better place. And that gives me faith for the future.
I agree. And I think nobody exemplified that more than Charlie Kirk.
100%.
And there's an example of a young man, a father, a husband, who was trying to do exactly that on college campuses and reach these young men and young women on these college campuses, had a profound effect, and then was taken out by an extreme radical individual on the left, and he was assassinated. I would even dare say he was martyred for his faith, because what he was doing was he was stepping out in the name of Christ, and he was trying to reach these young people and have those conversations. And man, he had such an impact on a generation that was profound. It was global. And but you're right. If we can get back to that place where we're having conversations, where we're, not get so offended by everyone and everything and work through these issues, we'll be in a much better place.
Yeah, man. You're exactly right about Charlie.
Yeah.
And that gives me faith too. I mean, the movement still continues, and you see I answer a lot of questions from young people about those issues on campuses, about free speech rights. So we answer so many inquiries on those type of issues, and we help a lot of people on those. So that the fight continues, the metaphorical fight for free speech access on college campuses and in public high schools and across the board. So those have only grown since Charlie. So yeah, he may have been the idea of Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk will never cease to exist. His courage and his character will continue to motivate young people and older people for generations. So we can't forget the courage that he's shown, and that is also a motivating factor for me. Just remembering those people that have come before us and have put us in this position. We can't quit. If we quit now or ever, we're doing their memory a disservice, and we're disgracing the efforts that they put forth. So we have to double down on our efforts and continue to live through their legacies and push those ideals of free speech, communication, American ideals of individual liberty, all the things that make this the greatest country in the history of the world.
Absolutely. And so just kind of bringing this in for a landing, for our audience or anyone out there listening today who might be facing something similar in their own community, what should they do? Like how could people continue to stand up? And then how can people learn more about Remnant Law or connect with you and your work?
I think just be present, just participate in civil society. Don't stick your head in the sand. Look, you may not be able to make every school board meeting, but at least review the agendas, listen to the minutes, go to your county commissioners meeting, pay attention to the votes of your local officials, participate. I mean, you don't have to be a vocal advocate and be a campaign volunteer for every local politician, but just pay attention to what your government is doing. That is really important. Again, an educated society is a free society. Once people stop paying attention, they want you to not pay attention. They want to pass things on the agenda without you even blinking an eye. They want to pass bonds without you digging into the interest rates and looking at the campaign finance reports. So I think what I would tell people is just be present where you can. I know it's tough with kids. Do what you can to participate. Link up with grassroots organizations such as Citizens Defending Freedom, and get with your local grassroots organizations to pay attention to what's going on. you can learn a lot from people. Go listen to public speakers and learn something, educate yourself, read books, listen to podcasts, all of these things to help become more informed and more educated on topics that interest you. Maybe you're not interested in the school book issue, but you're interested in property taxes or ethics reform. Find a subject that interests you and go get involved to the extent you can. As far as Remnant Law goes, if you have an issue that you need a legal consult with, or you want to support us, you can start with remnantlawfirm.com and go to our website, and our socials are linked there, and you can follow us on X or on Facebook and kind of see some of the stuff we're putting out. That's a big part of it. We try and manage the social media the best we can, but we're busy. So we've just since last year we have a 68% increase in client consults. We try to help everybody. There's a lot of cases that people don't qualify for. Again, we really focus on religious liberty, parental rights, kind of First Amendment claims. There's other issues that we handle, but generally we'll refer you out if you need assistance on something that doesn't fall within our bailiwick. But we try to help everybody we can, and we at least point them in the right direction if they don't qualify. And when I say qualify, as a public interest law firm, we're really focused on these issues. And as a pro bono organization, you can imagine, we get a lot of people that need help. There's so many people that need help. And it saddens me when we have to turn people away because it's maybe not an issue that we handle, or we refer them up somewhere else. But, we try and focus on those issues because if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And we are really hyper-focused on those religious liberty, First Amendment issues, and parental rights issues, and election integrity. That's part of our practice as well. There's a lot of these things are kind of related. So we focus on election integrity as well and assist where we can. That one's a little trickier when it comes to candidates and things like that because we don't get involved in partisan politics. But we certainly look at processes, government accountability, making sure things are being conducted correctly and with transparency. I mean, sunshine is the best disinfectant. So
Right.
we really try and assist citizens, making sure that their government is being transparent and accountable to the citizenry.
Amen. Well, we're called to be salt and light, and you're definitely making a difference, man. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for coming out here, coming on the show. It's been an honor to have you, and appreciate all the work you're doing, and continue fighting the good fight, brother.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Amen. All right. Now we're going to be going with Jonathan over to the Red Zone, where we're going to be talking about the war in Iran. What is Congress' role in war powers, and does the president have the constitutional authority to go to war with another country? The reason we're going to the Red Zone is because we're going to be talking about topics that we otherwise couldn't talk about or discuss on main platforms. If you want to join us over on the other side in the Red Zone, go to our Patreon account and we'll see you there. All right, Jonathan, let's go to the Red Zone.
Let's go.